Ah, you're here, ready to learn about vocal processing. Well, I assume you've got a great vocal take? Fantastic. Now you want to present that vocal in your song, and you want that vocal to stand out in the mix, to be right at the front, because that's one of the main part of a song, is the vocal. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how I do my way of presenting the vocal in the song, in the mix, so it stands out. Of course, there are many other options, many other ways you can do, but this is my preferred way. And plus, I'm going to show you how I do it in Studio One Prime, the free DAW edition. The only edition I have is the Pro plugin bundle, which will give you EQ, compressor, and room reverb, and so on. So once you learn the concept, you don't really have to use Studio One. You can use it in any other DAW. So don't let me using Studio One stop you using this concept of getting great vocal in any DAW that you're used to, that you know. So let's get started. To demonstrate today's tutorial, I'm going to be using multi-tracks from a song called I'm Alright by Angels in Amplifiers. And I hope that it doesn't trigger any copyright infringements. To speed things up, I've already added the plugins. These are all stock plugins. If you are, as I mentioned, if you are using the Prime edition, these are the Pro plugin add-on features for the Pro EQ and the compressor and the limiter. But if you're already using Artist and Professional version, these are all included. Again, if you are using another DAW, just follow up the settings, which are very similar in most compressors and EQs, and you should be able to do the same procedure in your own DAW. The first plugin in my chain is the Pro EQ. And the job of this Pro EQ is basically to do low cut. So I'm just going to enable it and turn it off. What we're doing is watching up any noise or frequencies below 100-120 Hertz, because those are below the vocal range, so they could be rumbles, room noise, and energy that we really don't need for the vocal track, because that can affect our compressors as they are trying to compress. So let's have a listen and see what we can find. Yep, a lot of frequencies down there, as you can see. So I usually use quite an aggressive slope, 36 dB of up to 48 dB, depends how noisy it is. So I'm just going to go with 48, and 95 Hertz is what I previously selected. And the way we can do that, I'm just going to solo the track and have a listen, is adjust the frequency until we hear the voice getting thinner, and then we back off.
I'm alright. As I pick up the pieces that are left of me, I'm alright. A bit away from you, and I'll be fine.
That's good. That all cleared out all the lower frequencies that we don't need. If you do find that the vocal track also has problems at the higher frequencies, maybe hiss or some noise at the top, you can also use the high cut to get rid of those frequencies as well. But in this case, the recording is quite fine. I'm not going to worry about that. I've also added a VU meter. This is a great tool because it will allow you to make sure that the signal from one plugin to the next is not exceeding. I can also set the scale to 12. That means whenever the needle reaches the 0 dB, it means it's minus 12 dB. So even if it goes over, it's not clipping. It's just that it means my scale is minus 12 dB. And that's what I like to do. For all my tracks is minus 12 dB. Plenty headroom for later on. So if we have a listen.
I'm alright. As I pick up the pieces that are left of me, I'm alright. A bit away from you.
As you can see, it's a great recording. It recorded at minus 12 dB. Perfect. If your meter shows above or too low at the 12 dB scale, and it's not reaching the 0 dB or it's going over, then you can use the mix tool or the clip gain right there to actually adjust the level so that you are getting the right amount of signal. This needs to be done right at the beginning as well, even before the Pro EQ. So if you put your VU meter first, then you can make sure that you've got minus 12 dB on average that's coming through. I'm going to pin the meter there, pinning by just clicking that small icon there. Keep editor open, so that way it will stay there all the time. Keep my eye out, making sure it doesn't go over the 0 dB, keeping my signal at minus 12 dB as I add my compressors and EQs of my chain. The next in my chain is my first compressor. Now the job of this compressor is to take care of the peaks, all these high peaks in the vocals. For that, my settings are high ratio, 12:1. You can have it higher, but 12:1 for this song because there's not many that loud peaks. So 12:1 is really good. And it is hard knee. So it's straight away, as soon as the signal reaches the threshold, it will clamp it down. My attack is fast, about 4.7 milliseconds at this stage. Anywhere between 3 to 5 milliseconds is good to capture the fast transients, and releasing at about 16 milliseconds. So anything between 10 to 20 milliseconds is good. And you need to make that judgment from the audio source, from the vocal that you are mixing. Of course, we have a listen and then we adjust the makeup gain for the loss of gain reduction. So let's start from there, and we'll keep an eye out on our meter as we are listening.
I'm alright as I pick up the pieces that are left of me. I'm alright, a bit away from you, and I'll be fine. Cleaning out the corner, putting back in order, but know I will always have this too, a little piece of you.
Okay, we're getting about minus 6 dB of gain reduction of that, so just getting rid of the peaks. You don't want to clamp it too far. Remember, it's small steps at a time, and minus 6 dB of overall reduction throughout the chorus is really good. So let's do the makeup gain.
I'm alright as I pick up the pieces that are left of me. I'm alright, a bit away from you, and I'll be fine. Cleaning out the corner.
You can also use the meter here.
But know I will always have this too, a little piece of you. I'm alright as I pick up the pieces that are left of me. I'm alright, a bit away from you.
And that takes care of the first compressor. Now that we have our peaks taken care of, and with the makeup gain we brought out some of the quieter parts to make them a little bit louder, the next thing I do is what I would call a surgical EQ. This is where I start to find any problems in the vocal and then fix them up, at the same time give them some clarity and some tone. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm still using another low cut, 75 Hz at 12 dB slope, just to make sure that there's nothing at the bottom there. And then these 2 points here are the points that I have found in this song, in this vocal, where it's actually ringing. So when we have a listen, I'm going to show you what it means. So I'm just going to turn them up.
I'm alright as I pick up the pieces that are left of me. I'm alright, a bit away from you.
That could be from the microphone, that could be from the room, and doesn't matter what microphone you use and what room you use, even if it's the best acoustically treated room, you will still get some ringing. So basically what we're doing is we swoop and we find it, and then we sort of bring it down without affecting too much of the vocals. And just to let you hear the other one.
And I'll be fine, cleaning out the corner, putting back in order, but know I will always have this too, a little piece of you. I'm alright.
And after that, I'm just boosting some of the top end to give some clarity. And I am doing a high cut at 16 Hz just to tame those S's and those brittleness in the sound, to keep it nice and clean. And that's for the first EQ. So let's see how far we've gone with the progress with relative to the context. Let's have a listen.
I'm alright as I pick up the pieces that are left of me. I'm alright, being away from you.
Turn it off.
And I'll be fine. Cleaning up the corner, putting back in order. Know I will always have this too. A little piece of you. I'm alright as I pick up the pieces that are left of me. I'm alright, being away from you.
Note how the level
And I'll be
is still minus 12 dB or hitting the 0 mark, even though we actually added compressor and we increased the gain. So what we're actually doing is we're reducing the dynamics, but we're not making it any higher level. We're still at minus 12 dB. So let's move on with the next compressor, which is the important compressor, the leveling compressor. So our second inline compressor, which I call it the leveling compressor, has slightly different values. The ratio is now half what it used to be, and it's now 6:1, so it's not slamming down as hard as it needs to be. My threshold is at minus 12, and I have left it at minus 12. And if you remember, our leveling is at minus 12 from the last one. So the level should not be any different. So we shouldn't really need to adjust the threshold from now on, unless we really want to compress it as an example. And our knee is now at 50% or 10 dB. So it will start compressing before even reaching the threshold. So that's hard knee, you can see right there. And now we are about halfway at 10. So it's much smoother. The attack again here, we actually slowing it down to 15 milliseconds. And the release is 41 milliseconds as well, because we want to allow most of those transients to come through now. We don't want to kill them off. And then, again, we need to adjust the makeup gain to make sure that we are reaching 0 dB on the meter, which is minus 12 dB. So let's have a listen and see how it goes.
I'm alright as I pick up the pieces that are left of me. I'm alright.
At the moment, we are looking at minus 3 dB, minus 4 dB of reduction. Again, tiny bit of reduction.
Cleaning out the corner, putting back in order. But know I will always have this too. A little piece of you. I'm alright as I pick up the pieces that are left of me. I'm alright, being away from you. And I'll be fine, cleaning out the corner, putting back in order. But no,
Let's listen in context.
A little piece of you. I'm alright as I pick up the pieces that are left of me. I'm alright.
Okay, now all the words are coming nice and clear. Unlike before, they were all hidden away because of the dynamics. The music was too loud. So now we can actually hear most of the words. So that's what I call the leveling stage compressor. The third and the final compressor in my chain, I normally use a different plugin. I do use the leveling compressor plugin like the LA2A, or if I want a little bit more aggressive, the LA76 plugins. But in this case, I'm going to demonstrate it with the stock plugin using the same compressor, doing very, very similar job. My ratio here is 2:1. Normally, anywhere between 2:1 or 3:1 should do, but I'm going to stick with 2:1 on this one. Again, minus 12 dB of the threshold. My knee is the highest I could get, which is 20 dB. So it's very smooth. So it's going to start compressing all the way down here before it even reaches the threshold. My attack is at the moment is at 30. I should be able to get it up to 40 as well. And my release about 107. So I'm letting most of it come through because there's no more peaks left. It's way leveled. And then we're going to work our makeup gain to make it into 0 dB on the meter, which is minus 12 dB. Now, what we are trying to achieve is that every time the vocal is on, we want the needle to, instead of moving all the way from 0 to -10 and -20, we want it to hover and move around 0 to 3 and -5 dB. So we're going to reduce the range of that. And that's what we're trying to achieve with this, what I call the balancing compressor. So let's give it a try. Again, -3 dB reduction. Okay, that's done it. That's all of the compressors. That's my chain. There's one more that I'm going to show you, which is the limiter. Now, before we move on to the last plugin, which is the limiter, let's have a listen and see how far we've gone with the changes. Let's turn all the plugins off and have a listen. You can see the meter is still not going past the 0, but words are not intelligible. So let's turn all the plugins on. As he says, as I pick up the pieces. Let's have a listen again. So you can hardly hear the words as I pick up the pieces. But when we turn it on, so we pretty much balanced everything. Now we have nice vocals. Last one is the limiter. Now, a lot of the time you may not need the limiter if you get a nice good balance of the rest of the tracks. But just to show you that how the limiter may help you if you want your vocals to be really aggressive and really loud and upfront. But for that, I'm going to change my scale to -6 dB now. So when it hits 0, it's -6 dB, so it's much louder. And for my limiter, I normally set this to maybe -1 dB or thereabouts. The release is 180 milliseconds, which is fine. And then, as I'm listening to it, I'm going to start increasing the input until I get my meter about -9, or it's hitting 0 right there. So let's give it a try.
I'm alright as I pick up the pieces that are left of me. I'm alright, a bit away from you, and I'll be fine. Cleaning out the corner, putting back in order. But no, I will always have this too, a little piece of you. I'm alright as I pick up the pieces that are left of me. I'm alright, a bit away from you.
As you can see, now the meter is moving around 0 to -3 dB. And we do have -3 dB or 4 dB of reduction on the limiter as well. So now we made it really loud and really compressed and up front and in your face. Let's have a listen with all the tracks. See how we went.
I'm alright as I pick up the pieces that are left of me. I'm alright, a bit away from you, and I'll be fine. Cleaning out the corner, putting back in order. But know I will always have this too, a little piece of you.
So as you can see, by using step by step at small increments of compression and taking care of the peaks and the leveling and EQing in between so we can balance the vocal up, we can achieve a great result. Of course, this also depends on the vocal track, how dynamic is the vocal and style of the song. So you can use your settings, the compression ratio, as well as attack and release ratio at each of the steps, as well as the EQ in between, to make sure that you don't lose any of the nuances of the vocalist, so that you don't get any distortion, no pumping effect. So make sure you watch out for that. So experiment, and this will differ from one vocalist to the next. So once you grab that concept, now you can actually apply it to virtually any vocal. At the same time, any instrument, any sound that has good, very high dynamics. So you can slowly compress it. Well, I hope this was helpful. If it was, give me the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great time making music. Cheerio, guys.